Okay, thank you, folks. Hi, um, I'm glad to be here because I sent an email to Jan several weeks ago, and I've asked him what kind of topic he wants to be covered on stage this year. I made some suggestions, and I'm really happy that he picked the one about web hosting because I was working in web ecosystem for more than 20 years now. Yes, I'm old. I'm sorry for that. And in fact, I have worked in various environments, in startups, in agencies, as a freelance. And what I've discovered quickly is that when it's time to push to production, there is always a big mess about what you want to do, with who you want to do that, how you can do it, and that all your projects are different. So choosing your hosting partner is not a simple action. You have to ask yourself from many things, and that's what I want to cover in this talk. Because pushing your application in production is just like sending something to Rabbit in a station. You push your code and you cross your fingers that everything will work as you wish, which is not always the case. So you have to be prepared to that. Is there any developers in the room? Okay. Is there any main part of the audience? Is there any sysadmins? Okay. Less. Is there any DevOps? Okay, less. Is there anybody who didn't raise his hand? Okay. Okay. There are funny GIFs in the talk, so I guess it will be not so long. Okay, the state of hosting tomorrow is something like that. It's a tweet that I saw 3 or 4 days ago. And in fact, that's it. You just run an OS, maybe in a container or a web server somewhere or something behind Kubernetes or not. You don't really know, and often you don't know how it's handled in the situation. So it's something really problematic. It seems to be something like this to push your code on production tomorrow, because our different stacks were becoming more and more complex in front, in back, with microservices, or with many front-end frameworks like React or Vue.js, etc., etc. And when you want to deploy, it's something like this now. So it's time to go to the moon again. And you have to choose your partner well. So what is a hosting provider? In fact, there is some kind of acronyms you might heard before. There is infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service is just you rent a server and you have a bare server or a bare virtual machine. On it you have pretty much just an OS, and you're alone with that. So you have to do everything by yourself, installing the dependencies, securing it, backing it up. So it's a huge task, and you have many things to do. Above it, you have the platform as a service, when your partner, your hosting provider, is doing all the maintenance for you. So you have monitoring, it gives you support, it gives you backups, it installs the dependencies for you. So it's easier to you. You just have to push your code in and have it to work on production. And then you have the software as a service, which is the last stack, the last tier. And in this kind of context, you just consume the service, but you have nothing to do on the server. So probably you won't have any access other than just the application that is running on the cloud. So is it about cloud, or is it about containers? and some ordinances, etc., etc. No, it's just some machines that runs somewhere, and you just use it as well as you use your local device. So be back to the basics. I'm Mads. I'm working at Always Data. I'm a tech evangelist. And what we do is web hosting. So I'm very happy to be able to talk about web hosting today. So what is important when you start to find your hosting provider? First thing, you have to check your hosting plan and the features that you need. You will need probably an SSL support built-in in your application. You will need a remote access through SSH or something like this. You need to have some options dedicated to your project, CPU or vCPU, RAM, storage, memory, etc. You need to have some supported features, which DB, which brokers, which languages, which frameworks are already installed and maintained by your provider. You need to have monitoring, you need to have a support, a tech support. What is the billing solution as you pay on the go or as you pay per month? This is the different things you have to check when you have to choose your provider. You need to check its reputation or its ranking. Is there any feedback on the internet about the provider? Is he been involved in some problems, or does he have a good reputation for its already customers? How did it resist to attacks? Because any providers are continuously under attacks. It's a case at Always Data where many attacks regularly, so it's not a big deal. Is there any blacklisting? Is your provider listed anywhere? You can check it on the RBL network. Is there any DDoS protection? Is there any leaks, or does the provider been involved in any leak or major leak before? So is it well secured, etc. What is its uptime? Does it run well? Is there a major interruption of service, or is it okay? And what are the limits of your plan in terms of features, in terms of bandwidth, in terms of storage? Because the limits are what you will be blocked at a time. So you have to prevent this, and you have to check it before. Be aware about backups, because when you run some codes in production, you will produce data, and those data need to be backed, because your code can always be deployed and redeployed and redeployed and redeployed in an endless way, but the data need to be backed and need to be restored if you need. So it's the job of your provider. So how to choose it well based on this various criteria? Is there a free trial? If there is, use it. You can check if your system is good, if it fits your different needs, if it's okay, and if you work together, if you have a good support after. Is it simple to use? Do you have any interface panel? Do you have any administration? Can you just jump on the server through SSH and do what you want in the server directly? Is there any options that you need to have, that you need to get on production, you can enable or disable on the go? Is there the support? What kind of support? Is there phone support? Is there ticket support? Who is doing the support at the company? Is it the tech people, or are there only support people, marketing support? You have to check it, check the uptime, then again, check the reputation, then again. So it takes me to what doesn't matter. The cost doesn't matter. Because if you see the prices applied by the main actors in cloud hosting, they are basically the same prices on the same ranges, and pretty much all hosting providers apply the same prices. So cost isn't a matter. You don't have to check it and to compare it. This is not a topic to choose your provider. And scaling is probably not a topic too, because it's fancy, I know, it's trendy. When you start a new project, you want it to be able to grow and to shrink as you go, because maybe you will have 100 of users and 1,000 of users and many users, and you want to absorb it on the charge, and you want to be ready if it occurs. But in fact, it's often extremely it's often not the case that you will have a service that need to grow and shrink on the go continuously. So try first with a provider that fits your needs, and if it offers scaling, it's cool. If not, it's not a problem. You may change after. You may change later. You may add new servers, and you may handle it later, and it will not be a problem if you work well with your provider. So scaling is probably not a point. What could have an impact on your production code? The localization. If you need to deploy your solution on various countries and various continents, you probably need to check where are the data centers, are they correctly linked together, because you will have a big redundancy between your data centers and between your solution and your servers. So if you need to deploy worldwide, which is not the case to all solutions, you need to check the various localization offered by your provider. Is there any APIs? Because you will probably need to add your deployment to your workflow, your existing workflow, which already exists. So if your provider gives you some APIs to allow you to deploy, it will be easier to you than doing it manually, so check it. And what kind of hosting did your provider will offer? Is it a shared hosting? Is it a dedicated hosting? Is it a cloud hosting? They are different, and you may be impacted by the others users, customers on the servers that you will use later. So be aware of that. Just a word about performance. You need to check bandwidth, the load time, cache, request handling, latency, etc. There are various indicators that help you to measure your performance of your solution. Some of these indicators may be handled to you in your solution, in your code, but some of them rely to your provider. So be ready to work in partner with it, because on some cursors, you won't have the hand directly, and you have to work with your provider to give you a good performance hosting. So now you're probably sure that you picked the right provider, and you are ready to deploy, and it's okay. You will be on the road, and it will work. In fact, no, you don't. You can be sure that you pick the right host providing, because any providers are different. There are some specificities. Any projects are different. Maybe you have made a choice, and this choice finally won't work. In fact, it's okay. It's not a big deal. You just have to move to another provider, and it's okay. You just have to take your data and push it on another provider solution, and it's okay. The case is that you have to care to not be stuck to a provider. If you produce a code that is ready to work only with Amazon Web Services, sorry Amazon for that, but you will stuck to Amazon, and when you're stuck with them, it's really, really complex and really hard to get a step back from them and go to another provider. So be sure that the code that you will produce is ready to deploy on every provider, every existing provider, so it will be okay to change after and to move to another provider. What you need to seek is about confidence, tech support, reliability, simplicity, and efficiency. If your provider gives you all these items and you are confident with him, you probably have no problem to work with him later and in a long partnership. thanks to you, I'm Mad. And if you have any question, you can reach me on the whole internet under my name, or if you have questions right now, I'm here for you. Thank you.
Hi. What kind of attacks do you see at your company? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. We're mainly under DDoS attacks. No surprise. Just because we host our servers in several data centers. And we have 4 different links from the internet to the data centers. So sometimes the DDoS attacks targets our connections and not the centers, and not our servers specifically, but our network providers. So we have many systems, basically anti-DDoS systems, that will block the attacks and reroute the traffic before it touch our servers. But mainly it's DDoS attacks, because we can prevent some attacks and physical attacks on the data centers, hopefully. We can prevent some attacks directly on the machines and on the system, on the OS, etc. And the rest of attacks that we can see are mainly infections in various sites, but this is mainly because the sites themselves aren't well protected by the developers. So we can do our best, but if you could have many holes, we can protect them for you. But for the rest, we're here.
Thank you for the talk.
Thanks.
Do you have any recommendations on not getting stuck to a particular provider? So I see some clients that get really into like Aurora with AWS or certain services. How do you recommend companies that don't get stuck to a provider?
Sorry?
How do you recommend us, like companies, to not get stuck to a provider?
Okay. In fact, I worked in startup, and we decided to deploy all the code in Amazon Web Services. So it was a little bit complex application, because there was a front end, there was a back end, there is a system that process asynchronously many tasks. So there is many brokers, and we have to scale it because at this time we expected a million of users. So it was really important to us that we have a good solution. So Amazon Web Services seems to be the good solution, the good provider, because we could scale and we could shrink if we need, and we can instance new server in Snap, etc., etc. But in fact, our tech leader did a little benchmark. He chose Amazon, and then we start to work with them, and we finally find that we need to have to adapt our backend and our brokers and our databases, and years after weeks after weeks, we finally developed a code really fitted for Amazon exclusively. And when we finally found that Amazon wasn't the good provider, moving away from Amazon was really huge work. And that's my advice. You may not have to develop specifically for a provider. If you do that, there's a problem somewhere. Choosing a provider is like choosing materials that really fit for your needs, but not especially you do not have to prepare all your stuff for this material exclusively. So you could choose, you can move on, you can change if you need, and just choosing to develop just for one provider is probably another time again a monocultural problem. We saw that with diversity. We saw that with the browser wars, with Internet Explorer 6. Monocultural is a danger. So choosing to develop to just one provider is not a good solution. Okay.
I might have one question as well.
Yep.
What do you think, like things like, I mean, especially Kubernetes will play a role in this provider agnostic thing?
Mm.
Do you really think it's just like kind of a trend, and we are gonna go back to PaaS, traditional PaaS, or do you think like those Kubernetes-based solutions are the future for just saying, okay, this is my infrastructure, just choose, as you said, hardware features, etc. But everything you build, you just can deploy cross data center or switch provider. What's going to happen in this field?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I was at that scale last Friday, and there was a talk about how you can work with Kubernetes and how you can debug your application when you work with Kubernetes. And in fact, the introduction of this talk is just that using Kubernetes in production is something really difficult, because when you start to develop a system with many microservices and you just push it in production and it magically works, and you have a problem because there's a race condition in your code that you didn't see in before, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and you don't know why. And when you have to find where it works and where it doesn't work, and in which container, and what are the stack traces, etc., etc., it's a big mess. So Kubernetes is trendy yet. I think it's a probably good solution. Is it becoming the only solution available? I'm not sure. It will probably be one option among many others. And there is this famous graph about new technologies. When you see when a technology is really trendy, many people are speaking about it, but not many people are really using it. And then after, there is a low graph when you see that finally many people are using it, but not many people are speaking about it because it's okay, everybody knows the technology and it works well. So it will be probably a choice next. It's, for me, a really good solution when you work with microservices, because you can easily deploy it on production and just push your code and it will work. But it's not the only existing solution, just because you probably won't have microservices anywhere in the future. So just an option.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.